Hi, in this video we are going to talk about the Common Core State Standards, specifically how to read the document for the English Language Arts Standards. That's important to know because the document is rather lengthy and I want you to be able to find the most important information quickly, so we're going to go over this. So you can find the Common Core State Standards by going to coursestandards.org. And there is a page where you can actually download a PDF of the standards, and I have placed this direct link to this website that we're viewing right now on Blackboard, so you can easily access that and download it. So I've already downloaded the PDF of the Common Core State Standards for English Language Arts. So here's the front page, and in subsequent pages you have things like a table of contents, an introduction, a little bit of information about how the standards were designed, what the standards cover and what they don't, this sort of information. So I think that you can certainly read that on your own, so I'm not going to go over this information, this front matter of the Common Core State Standards. What I really want you to understand from this video is how to read the document and actually get at the standards. So here I am on page 9. This is really where the meat of the standards begin, and this is what you need to know for writing lesson plans in CIR 306. So, one thing you should be aware of is that there are 4 strands to the Common Core State Standards for English Language Arts. Those 4 strands are reading, writing, speaking and listening, and language. Now, with reading, there are actually 3 sub-strands. There is reading literature, reading informational text, and reading foundations, which consists of early reading skills like phonics and phonemic awareness. So reading actually has several substrands, whereas the others do not. So again, those are reading, writing, speaking and listening, and language. So at the start of every section for each strand, we have what are called anchor standards. Anchor standards are standards that students should be able to achieve by the time they have finished high school. So these anchor standards are what students should know and be able to do at the end of their K-12 school career. These are kind of like guiding goals that we want to keep in mind as students go through their school years. So those are good to know about. However, what we want to look at are grade level standards. So for every standard that we see for the different grade levels that we see here, each of these standards are tied to an anchor standard. So basically, these grade level standards that we see here are all steps that students will take to eventually achieve the anchor standard. So for example, let's look at anchor standard number 1 for reading. Read closely to determine what the text says explicitly and to make logical inferences from it. Cite specific textual evidence when writing or speaking to support conclusions drawn from the text. So at the end of high school, students need to be able to do that. But obviously, we don't expect students to be able to do that in kindergarten or first grade. However, there are steps that kindergarten and first grade students can take towards achieving that goal determined in the anchor standard. So, this standard here, number 1, for kindergarten, you can see that these are divided into columns according to grade level. Kindergarten, grade 1, and grade 2, and so forth. So standard 1 for kindergarten is, with prompting and support, ask and answer questions about key details in a text. So if kindergartners are able to achieve that standard by the end of kindergarten, they are on the right path for achieving this anchor standard, number 1, that they need to achieve by the end of high school. Same with first grade. In first grade, students are expected to ask and answer questions about key details in a text. So this is slightly more advanced than what kindergarten students are expected to do. In kindergarten, students get prompting and support to ask and answer questions about key details in a text. In first grade, we expect students to be able to do that by themselves. And in second grade, we expect students to have an even more complex understanding. In second grade, students ask and answer such questions as who, what, where, when, why, and how to demonstrate understanding of key details in a text. So with every grade level, we're making it a little bit more complex. So all of these standards are related to anchor standards. So kindergarten standard number 1 for reading is related to anchor standard number 1. Grade 1 standard number 6 is related to anchor standard number 6 for reading, and so on. So you get the idea. So the document starts off with kindergarten, grade 1, and grade 2, but if you scroll down to subsequent pages, you are able to see the standards for grade 3, grade 4, and grade 5, and it works the same way. Like anchor standard number 1 is tied to standard number 1 for grade 4. So they're all related. So think of grade level standards as steps toward achieving the anchor standards specified at the beginning of the document. So as I mentioned before, there are 4 strands to the standards: reading, writing, speaking and listening, and language. And I also mentioned that reading has 3 substrands: reading literature, reading informational text, and reading foundations. So one thing you should be aware of with this document is that when you are looking at grade level standards, you will see a box like this in the upper right hand corner of the document that'll tell you what strand or substrand of the standards that you're looking at. For example, RL stands for reading literature, and so on. And what's different about the reading standards is they only have a set of anchor standards that applies to all the substrands of reading. So the anchor standards for reading are the same for reading literature, reading informational text, as well as reading foundations. So those are all interrelated. So for example, here now we move into the standards for reading informational text. In the corner we see RI to indicate that we're talking about the reading strand and the informational text substrand of reading. All right. So once we scroll through the reading substrands, then we come to the next major strand of the Common Core State Standards, and we're looking at writing. Again, the writing section starts off by listing anchor standards, those goals that students should be able to achieve by the time that they are done high school. And once again, we have grade level standards that follow the anchor standards, like we have here. Again, kindergarten, 1st grade, 2nd grade, 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. And again, all of these grade level standards are all related to their corresponding anchor standards. Okay? And notice up here, again, we have this little signifier that lets us know what standards we're looking at. W stands for writing, so pretty common sense, I think. So then we have standards for speaking and listening. Again, we start off with anchor standards. These are followed by grade level standards. So once you understand the organization of the standards, it's pretty well organized and it's logical. It's just kind of tricky to get to know it, so it's helpful to point it out to you. Again, in the upper right hand corner, SL stands for speaking and listening, which is all about oral language standards. And then finally, we move on to our final strand. Language, again, starts off with anchor standards. Then we move into grade level standards. It's signified by an L in the box here. And language standards include things like knowledge of grammar, as well as conventions, and also students' knowledge of vocabulary. So that's what's included in the language standards. And that's for the purposes of this class, those are the pages that you need to be familiar with from the Common Core State Standards document. I mean, certainly there's a lot more about the document that you can learn about, but for our purposes here, I think that those are the key things you need to know. So when we write standards in our lesson plans in this class, there is a special way that we designate our standards. So in the space in your lesson plan where you are asked to supply a standard, you use an abbreviation to signify which of the Common Core State Standards that you are going to address in your lesson plan. So I want to show you how we abbreviate those standards. So I am going to look at reading literature for kindergarten, standard number 1. Scrolling back up to that. Where is kindergarten? Okay, so I'm looking at this standard here with prompting and support, ask and answer questions about key details in a text. Now, if I was going to include that standard in my lesson plan, I would write it out like this to designate which standard I'm talking about. I would write out CCSS, for Common Core State Standards, ELA, for English Language Arts, RL is the name of the strand, and again, you find that information in the upper right-hand corner. In this case, our standard is about reading literature, so it's RL. Then you type in the grade level, in this case, kindergarten. We signify it with a K, and then the number of the standard. In this case, it's number 1, and then I write out the standard with prompting and support, ask and answer questions about key details in a text. Okay, so that's how you do it. It's important that you know these abbreviations. Let's look at one more example. I'm just going to pick one at random here. All right, so let's say we're looking at writing standard number 4 for 3rd grade. This is how we would do it. We would write ccss.ela.w for writing. We're talking about 3rd grade, so I would put 3, and we're talking about standard number 4, which I would put at the end of my abbreviation right here. And I don't have the standard memorized because it's kind of long, so I'm just going to copy and paste it from the document and place it here. And that doesn't look that good, but for our purposes, we don't need to make it look pretty. So that's how you abbreviate your standards. And if you have questions about how to do that when you write your lesson plans, let me know. But I think it's pretty simple. I think if you just follow the examples that I provided on model lesson plans in this class, I think you should be in really good shape for doing this on your own when you write lesson plans. So hopefully this little tutorial about how to read the document, at least how to read the key parts of the document that you need to know for CIR 306, has been helpful. And this week you're also reading an article about the standards, so I hope that that really helps you get to know the standards.